Hey there, it's Dave with FlipperForce, and this is a case study on how to put together a detailed estimate and scope of work for your rehab projects using our Rehab Repair Estimator tool. So this property we have here is a cosmetic rehab. It mainly just needs new painting on the exterior, new exterior doors and windows, and a new roof. And then on the inside of the property, it's mostly cosmetic as well. All of the existing room layouts are going to just stay the same. So we're mostly just going to be tearing out the existing finishes and replacing it with new cabinetry, flooring, paint, and fixtures throughout. So we walked through the property and we took some photos, and here's just a few before photos of what the property looked like before. So you can see the exterior of the painting is quite faded, but the siding is in decent shape. The windows are old aluminum windows that need to be replaced. The garages need to be replaced as well, and then the roof is in very poor condition, so we'll be replacing that as well. If we take a look inside, the kitchen cabinets are actually fairly new and in decent shape. So we're just planning on painting the cabinets, and then we'll be installing new granite countertops, a tile backsplash, and then new stainless steel appliances and hardwood floors. The bathrooms will also need to be completely torn out and upgraded with new PEX plumbing, a new vanity, new plumbing fixtures, and tile finishes. In the bedrooms and living spaces, we will be installing all new interior doors and then ripping up the existing flooring and installing new carpet flooring, painting all the walls, and installing new light fixtures. So now that we've reviewed the condition of the existing property, let's take a look at how we can estimate the cost for a rehab project. So now what we're looking at here is the Rehab Repair Estimator tool included within the FlipperForce house flipping software. This is a tool that you can use to create detailed repair estimates for your projects. So right now we are looking at the rehab template, which is one of the pre-built templates that we have built into the estimator that has a pre-built list of common repair categories and repair items and unit prices that you can use as a starter template to help you estimate costs for your projects. So you can see here it's broken down into exteriors, interiors, MEP, and other. The exterior section has a pre-built list of categories for exterior repairs. The interiors is going to be more for the interior repairs and improvements that you'll make on the interior of the property. And then the MEP systems is for your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems that you'll be working on your property as well. So let's start with the exterior of the property, and then once we get done with the exterior, we'll move into the interiors, then our MEP, and then we'll talk about the adders that we can add onto the estimate to cover contingency and stuff like that. So the first item in our estimate is going to be roofing. So if you noticed before, we needed a new architectural shingle roof. We do have a list of common roofing items that you can see here. We've got asphalt roofing shingles, wood shingles, metal roofing. The one that we're going to work with is going to be the asphalt architectural shingle, so it's a little bit nicer than a 3-tab shingle, and we've got about 20 squares of roofing on this property. So you can see what it's going to do is it's going to multiply the quantity that we put in here by the labor and material amount to give you a budget for what that's going to be for the roof. Now, $300 a square, generally I think we can get it for around $250, so I'm actually going to plug in $250 there. So all of the unit prices that we have in our repair estimator database, you can change and adjust those to fit your specific market, and we definitely recommend that you talk to your local contractors when you are putting together your estimates, just to make sure that you're using local pricing for your rehab projects. But we've got a good starter template in here for you with national database pricing, so should be a good starter for you as you get started going through your estimates. So we plugged in our roofing number, so we've got about a $5,000 budget for our roofing. Remember, the siding was in pretty decent shape, but we needed to do some exterior painting to the property. Now we've got a couple different options here. You can actually quantify the amount of siding that needs to be painted and plug in that. So in that scenario, you just go measure the perimeter of the house, multiply it by the height of the walls that you're going to be painting, and then just figure out all 4 sides of the house, or if there's some different shapes and sizes in there, you'll have to kind of take that into account for the property as well. but we've got roughly 1,500 square feet of siding, so I'm just going to plug in 1,500, and it's going to multiply it by $1.25. So depending on where you're at, you may or may not be able to get it for you may be able to get it for cheaper than that. You know, some people are paying $1 a square foot for the property for the siding that they're getting painted, but it all kind of depends on where you're located. So we've got $1.25 in there multiplied by the square footage of $1,500. So we've got around $2,000 for the exterior painting. Now we do have some other stuff that needs to be painted as well. There is a shed that needs to be painted, so we do have an item down here for paint detached structures. So I'm just going to plug in one, and then I'm just going to throw a budget at it of about $500. So it's just a shed, and it's probably going to get painted for a couple $100 there. So I'm just going to plug that in as a rough budget for painting that shed, and then we're just going to move on to the next section, which is going to be decks and porches. So if you recall, our deck that we had needed to have the deck boards replaced, so the actual structure of the deck was in decent shape, but the deck boards themselves were in pretty bad shape, so we were going to remove and replace the existing deck boards. So we've got a couple different options. You've got wood or you've got cedar. Cedar's kind of considered more high-end material. Otherwise you can use just kind of a treated lumber, and then you could stain that treated lumber if you need to. So we've got a 150 square foot deck times $7.50 to replace the deck boards. So that's a good budget for the replacement of the deck boards there. And actually I think I forgot what we needed to do was we also need to replace the railing. So I think we had about 20 lineal feet of railing. So you can see that that's going to end up being another $500 to replace the railing and the balusters of the railing as well. So now let's move on to exterior doors. So on this property we have an exterior door at the front. There's also a steel entry door that's going to go from the basement into the garage, and then we are also going to replace the back door with a new French patio door. So let's do the two steel entry doors here. $250. Sometimes you can get a cheaper one for maybe $175, but we're just going to throw in $250 for a decent steel entry door. And then we've got a French patio door, so this is around a 5 to 6 foot door. Again, you might be able to get a door for maybe around $400, but we're leaving enough room in our budget to purchase something maybe a little bit nicer on this property if we need to. And then we still need to get the door hardware for these doors. So we've got 3 doors, and we need to get the door hardware sets for those doors, so we're going to include that in there as well. Windows, so we've got 11 windows on the house. Now we're not going to take the time to measure all the windows right now. We're just going to throw in a rough budget for each window. So we're just going to plug in 11, and then it's going to multiply it by a budget number of around $225 for those windows. If you're looking for something maybe a little bit fancier, maybe it's a double hung window, or maybe you're looking at a wood window, you'll want to use those because those window materials are going to be more expensive than just a single hung vinyl window. The next one is going to be the garage doors. So we've got 2 single garage doors, and then we need the operators for those doors. So we've got those values plugged in, so we're basically just going to tear out the existing old wood doors that are in there, and then we're going to replace them with some new fiberglass garage doors with new automatic door operators. Driveway is in decent shape, so we don't really have any concrete or asphalt work. And then landscaping, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just plug in a budget for the materials. So instead of quantifying all of the actual trees or shrubs that we want to install, I'll just throw $250 and $500 in material for the landscaping budget, and that should cover a couple guys taking half a day to install the landscaping materials, so the couple bushes here and there, and then the mulch beds, and then the material should cover maybe 8 to 10 shrubs or bushes, plus the mulch for the mulch beds as well. So that's generally what that budget number is going to cover. So we're just basically going to do a little bit of work in the front of the house. We're not going to be doing anything elaborate on the back of the house or anything like that. This is really just to clean up the front of the property there and make it look a little bit nicer and cleaned up. And that really kind of sums it up for the exteriors. We do want to install a new mailbox, or we've got an old crappy mailbox on this house that we want to replace, and then a new address number. So a lot of times you'll just want to spice up a new address number right there on the front of the house. And then we've also got new shutters. So I believe there are 8 windows. Each of those windows are going to have 2 shutters. So that would be 16 shutters each. So you can see that actually adds up to a pretty good number there for the shutters. So depending on whether you're going a custom route, you might be able to get some, they might be a little bit more expensive than this, but if you're getting some, plastic or vinyl shutters, you'll probably be able to get them for cheaper than 50 bucks each as well. So just consider that kind of stuff when you're going through the pricing here. Make sure you're looking at Home Depot or Lowe's and looking at the materials that you're wanting to be using on your projects, and making sure that those unit prices that you have are matching up with the numbers we have here in our database. So now we're moving on to the interior. So really the first thing that you'll do in the interior is demo out all of the stuff that you have on the inside of the property. So instead of going through and putting labor hours to each individual item on the interior, really I like to just take an estimate of how many hours I think it'll take 2 to 3 guys to tear out the inside of the house. So generally you can do a demo of a property in 1 to 2 days, and you might have 2 guys doing it. So if you've got 2 guys working a day, that's going to be 16 man hours total. So if 16 times 20 bucks an hour, you've got 320 bucks. I'm going to put 2 days worth in here, so we've got 32 hours. So you've got 640 bucks is the total budget to have 2 guys go into a house for 2 days and tear out all the carpeting, tear out the bathrooms, and any kind of miscellaneous items like the doors and stuff like that. So 640 bucks there. Another thing you'll want to consider is a dumpster. So we've got dumpster rental here. You'll also see it in our general conditions section. You can find dumpsters in there. So it really just kind of depends on where you want to throw your dumpster budget. It kind of really depends on where you're located on what dumpsters cost. Used to be able to get dumpsters for around $300, which is pretty cheap. I've heard that other people around the country are paying like $750 for their dumpsters, so that's just something you'll want to confirm with your local dumpster companies. Depending on the environmental rates and fees and taxes and stuff like that, it can vary pretty widely. So around here in Kansas City, you can get it for about $300 to $400. So I'm going to plug in $400 for one dumpster rental. That's going to be used to basically throw away all the demolished materials, but then once we get any other kind of miscellaneous materials throughout construction that need to be thrown away, we'll throw those in the dumpster as well. So remediation and abatement, that's really more for if you've got lead paint, asbestos, mold, stuff like that. So we don't have anything like that going on. Framing is going to be if you're changing any kind of walls around, adding new walls, tearing out walls and needing to reframe stuff, so we don't need any of that. Same thing with insulation. If you're getting into new walls, or maybe you need to add new insulation in the attic, that's where you could plug in your insulation. But really on this project we did need a lot of wall patching. So we've got some items in here where you can basically do it by patch, or you could just maybe plug in a lump sum number. So if you said, well, let's just throw $500 at it at patching, and that'll just have a guy go into the house for maybe 2 days to just patch walls throughout the house. So that's how you just kind of need to think about stuff sometimes, is you may not have just an item in your estimate for patching walls. Maybe you'll just have a guy in there for, you could say 8 hours. So if we want to delete this and say 8 hours, change this quantity to hours, and maybe a drywall guy is going to cost you $40 an hour. 8 times 40 equals 320. So there's some different ways that you can think about how you're estimating your costs. You can just throw a lump sum $500 at it. You can try to think about how many hours it's going to take for a guy to do that and multiply it by a labor rate. Or you can, quantify it. So if you've got 10 patches, each patch is going to cost maybe $50 to $100 to fix. You can do it that way as well. So that's kind of how you got to think about things sometimes, is think about how your contractors are going to be installing things, and then you can do that, use that to help you estimate your costs for those items. So we've got a kitchen package. This is really, if you're going to be installing a new kitchen, it really packages everything together. So if you just want to throw a lump sum $10,000 at your kitchen, you could do it that way. Same thing with bathrooms, and I might go ahead and do that with our bathrooms just to save a little bit of time. So we've got 2 full bathrooms in this property, and basically what it's telling you is it would roughly be about $1,500 in labor and around $2,000 in material, and this would be for an average grade bathroom. So this would be if you were tearing out existing bathroom, putting everything back in the same exact location. So you're just replacing the fixtures in their exact location, and then upgrading the finishes with new tile. So really nothing too crazy. You're not reconfiguring the bathroom. You're not doing anything like that where you're changing out the plumbing and moving it or reconfiguring things. This would be if you're just reinstalling everything in the exact same location. It's probably going to cost you around $3,000 to $5,000 to replace a full bathroom. Now if it's a master bathroom, which is a very large bathroom, then you probably need to increase your budget on stuff like that to where maybe it's going to be more like $5,000 to $10,000 for your master bathroom. So it all kind of depends on the shape, size, scope of work of your bathrooms, but generally speaking you might be able to spend around $3,000 to $5,000 on a bathroom, and just to rehab it, install new finishes, all new fixtures, stuff like that. So okay, cabinetry. So we aren't really doing anything with the cabinetry. If you remember, the kitchen cabinets were in pretty good shape, so we were really just going to paint the kitchen cabinets. The only thing that we might do here, and actually now that I'm thinking about it, we do need to replace one of the cabinet doors. So one of the cabinet doors was missing off of the pantry cabinet, so we're just going to need to have somebody custom make that to match. And since it is custom, I'm just going to plug in a bigger budget for that cabinet door. And then also we're going to install new cabinet door pulls. So there's about 15 doors in the kitchen, and we're going to install new door knobs and pulls on those doors, existing doors. So that's just a budget of what we can spend there. Generally you can buy a cabinet door pull for $5, and it's pretty easy to install a cabinet door pull, so we're just going to throw $5 at it for installing the cabinet door pulls as well. So that's all we're doing to our kitchen cabinets, but we are going to be installing new countertops. So this kitchen is fairly small. We've got about 30 square feet of countertops, and you can get granite countertops. It really kind of varies on what you're buying, but you can get them as cheap as $30 a square foot, but you could be paying up to $80 plus a square foot depending on how high end of materials that you're purchasing. I'm just going to plug in $45 a square foot because that's just kind of middle grade. It's kind of actually on the lower end. So I'm going to plug that in as a budget for the stone countertops. And then a lot of times the countertop people will install the stainless steel sink bowl with the countertop itself. So I'm going to plug in a budget for that sink bowl that goes underneath the countertop, and that should cover us for our countertops. So as far as the countertops in the bathroom, remember we had our bathrooms and we calculated that as a packaged amount. So I'm not including the bathroom countertops in this because I'm assuming that's included in that bathroom's number that we had estimated above. Now appliances, we do have packages in here, so you could just use a package. So on a lower end rehab economy grade appliance package, you might be able to spend $1,500. Average grade is probably about $3,000. If you want to go in and do a detailed quantity takeoff of each one, you could do it down here. But I'm just going to plug in one economy package, and then I'm just going to increase it to $2,000. Because it's probably going to be somewhere in between the low end grade up to the average grade is where we're going to be. So I'm going to plug in 2,000, and then you've got other stuff here. that you may need to consider. So sometimes Lowe's and Home Depot charge you about $60 to $75 to have your appliance delivered. A lot of times it's free installation, but depending on where you're buying from, you may or may not have installation included. But this is just kind of a weird one. A lot of times the cords and water lines are sold separately from the appliances. So I guess you could assume that that's included in your appliance package above. If you don't think it's included, then you may need to just throw an extra 25 to 50 bucks at your appliance cords and water lines that may not be included with your appliance package that you're purchasing. Interior doors. So if you recall, we were going to be installing all new interior doors throughout. So these are going to be the doors that go to your bedrooms, go to your bathrooms, and then your closets. So we had 10 interior doors. Now you've got an option for hollow core or solid core wood doors. Now hollow core just means that the door is hollow, so they're lighter and they're cheaper. Solid core are doors that are solid, so they've actually got wood filled in between the cores. So those are actually quite a bit more expensive. On this grade of a house, we're just going to install a hollow core wood door, which you can get for around $75 to $90 per door. All kind of depends on the size, but we're just going to plug in $85 here. We're not going to worry about the different shapes and sizes of the doors just yet. We're just going to plug in a budget, and then we'll figure out the actual door sizes later on once we get the property under contract and are sorting everything out. So then we're also going to have 5 privacy latches and 5 passage latches. So generally passage is a little bit more expensive than privacy is a little bit more expensive than passage, so you might be able to get this for $10 a latch, but for the most part it's going to be between $10 to $15 per door latch or door knob for your doors. So now we've got our interior doors estimated. Interior woodwork. So a lot of times I'll just plug in a lump sum allowance for wood base. So you can replace all the wood base throughout a house. A lot of times, certain areas of the house, the wood base is in good shape, but in corridors or other areas that have people in them a lot, those areas need to be replaced. So a lot of times we'll just plug in an allowance of maybe $100 lineal feet, which ends up being around $400 to $500, which will just be kind of an allowance that we'll use if we need to replace the base in the house. So that's really all we're going to do as far as the wood trim in the property. The closets probably need some new shelves, so I'm just going to plug in some new closet kits as well. $300 is a little expensive. I think you could probably do it for $150 a closet, so I'm going to reduce that down. I think the $300 is more for a custom closet installation where you might have a cabinet or two in there as well. So that'll basically sum up the interior woodwork. Next is interior painting. So similar to kind of the exterior painting item that we had above, you can quantify all of the interior walls. So basically what you would do is you'd go through and you'd find out the perimeter of all of the interior walls. You would multiply that by the height of the walls, and that would give you the surface area and quantity that needs to be painted. A lot of times people will just use the property square footage. So if this is a 1,500 square foot property and that's floor area, you could just use roughly $1.75 a square foot, somewhere around there, which will kind of just be a budget based upon a general rule of thumb budget based upon cost history of what people are generally paying on a cost per square foot of the property size and square footage. So I'm just going to do that instead of going in and actually quantifying each individual room's interior walls. But if you want to do that, you could definitely do that by using these detailed items down below. And then carpet and vinyl. So we're going to be installing hardwood flooring in the kitchen, but otherwise, other than that, in the bathrooms we'll have tiling, but other than that, we will have carpeting throughout the living areas. So we've got about 900 square feet of new carpet, and I'm going to go at an average grade of around $200, or $2 a square foot, multiplied by 900 square feet. So we've got about $1,800 in carpet that we're going to need installed on this property. Now, if you're doing a low-end rehab or maybe a rental property, you could definitely get the carpet down below $2 a square foot. You might be more like $1 to $1.50 a square foot for the lower grade carpet on your property. The next item is going to be tiling. So tiling is going to be really in our bathrooms. Now again, if you recall, we've kind of included tiling in our packaged bathrooms item up here. So we're assuming that the floor tiling is actually included in the bathrooms package above. So we don't actually need to do anything here besides the kitchen tile, which is going to be our backsplash tile. So we've got a line item here for kitchen backsplash, and we've got about 25 square feet. Now you'll notice that this is more of kind of a high-end tile, so we've got $15 a square foot in material. So generally you might have maybe a decorative tile there as a backsplash, so that's why we've got a higher unit price there for the kitchen backsplash there. Other than that, we are not going to have any tile. The tile is all included in that bathroom's packaged budget that we have up above. And then hardwood flooring is our other finish item. So we've got laminate flooring, and then we've got hardwood flooring. We're just going to do an average grade flooring here, and we've got about 300 square feet. And we're going to change this to more like $3 a square foot, because we can actually get pretty good hardwood floor for $3 a square foot. So I'm just going to change that down to 3, and you can see our budget of $1,200 for the install, and then $900 for the material. And I think that's it from the interior standpoint. If we go over to the MEP section, MEP stands for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So plumbing is the first category that we have here. Again, we've got a lot of the plumbing covered in our plumbing budget above in the bathroom section, but we do need to get our kitchen stuff covered. So kitchen sink, that was actually included in our countertops, but we've got a kitchen faucet that we need to do. We've got a garbage disposal, and then we need somebody to hook up and install the dishwasher, and then also supply water for our new refrigerator. And then again, all of the bathroom plumbing work is all included in that bathrooms package that we estimated earlier. The next section is going to be the HVAC. The HVAC is going to be for your heating, ventilation, and cooling items. On this property, the air conditioning was actually pretty new. I think it had been installed within the last 5 years, so it was actually in decent shape. But we're going to plug in some tune-up and service in here just in case we run into any items while we're working on the property. And then we're also going to have them upgrade the programmable thermostat. We're also going to install new supply air grills. So this is more of just a finished look. So a lot of times if you're going through a house, they'll have old supply air grills that just don't look good, and you're already upgrading the light switches with new white cover plates and stuff like that. So in order to really make everything look new and finished, you need to install new supply air grills and return air grills. So we're going to install 10 new grills, and those are pretty cheap. You can generally buy them for 15 to 25 bucks each, and they're pretty easy to install. So that's the final item that we'll have installed in our HVAC, and that's something that you don't necessarily have to have an HVAC technician install. That's something that your carpenter or just handyman can install, that kind of stuff. So one of the things that we found on this property was that the property actually had an old 100 amp panel that needed to be replaced, but it also had aluminum wiring throughout the property. So that was one thing that we wanted to replace. You'll notice in here we've got a budget item for just rewiring an entire property. So this is a 1,500 square foot property times $4 a square foot, so roughly $6,000 is what it'd take to install a new electrical panel and wiring throughout. Now we actually got a quote and it was quite a bit cheaper than that. It was maybe $3 a square foot. So that was $3 a square foot over 1,500 square feet. That's to rewire the property. That's to install a new service to the property. So tearing out the old 100 amp panel, upgrading the service to a 200 amp panel, replacing all the circuits and rewiring the house, and then running a new service from the service main to the property. So that was included all for that $4,500. Now one thing that wasn't included is all of the wall patching that needs to happen when you do something like that. So in order to get those electrical runs throughout the house, you will have to tear out a little bit of drywall in order to get those electrical runs to all of the outlets throughout the property. So honestly, if I were to go back, I might take a look at our drywall section. I think we only had $320, it looks like, for wall patching. So I might change that to more like 16 hours, at least double that. So that way we have a guy in there for 2 days that's going in, patching all of the walls, and then skim coating those walls that need to be patched. So increase that budget just to take into account that extra electrical work that's going to have to happen behind the existing walls and drywall. And that number up there doesn't necessarily include our lighting, so we will still have to buy all of the light fixtures. So we've got several ceiling dome lights, so these are just going to be kind of in the corridors, so down the hallway, maybe an entryway. Then we've got a chandelier fixture in our dining area, ceiling fan fixtures in the bathroom, or not the bathrooms, the bedrooms, and then the living room. So we've got 4 of those, and then we've got 2 new exterior wall light fixtures. And one of the things you'll notice is we've got labor over here, so we're kind of getting doubled up. The $4,500 actually did include the labor to install the lights, but it doesn't include the material for the lights. So if we go back, we can zero this stuff out. So now we've got a good electrical budget for the materials, as well as the labor to install a new electrical panel and wiring throughout the property. So that's a quick run through of the exterior, interiors, and MEP. Now we've got our other items that you may want to take a look at. So general conditions, this is going to be dumpster, storage container, temporary toilet, miscellaneous tools. So we've got our dumpster taken care of in our demolition budget. The architectural and engineering fees, so this would be if you need to have a structural engineer take a look at tearing out walls. We're not doing anything like that. As far as permits, pulling building permits, the only permit that we'll really need is going to be the electrical permit. So since we're keeping everything in the exact same location, we're really just replacing plumbing fixtures. So in our area, you don't have to actually pull a permit for replacing a plumbing fixture in the exact same location. But since we are tearing out the existing electrical panel, rewiring the entire property, that's going to need a building permit, and that's actually included in our contractor's number. So that's another thing that you need to coordinate, is whether your contractor actually is including permits in their numbers, or do you need to pull that permit separately and pay for the permit separately on the project. In this example, our electrical contractor is picking up that building permit. And here's the building permit section, which I was just talking about. So we do not need a building permit, so we're actually good on the other section. So if you go to the adder section, this is where you can add in additional costs for the project. So you can see we've got a location adjustment. This is where you can adjust your location factor for where you're located across the country. So maybe if you're on the East Coast, New York City, something like that, it's going to roughly be 25 to probably 40% more expensive than the national average. If you're on the West Coast, Los Angeles, San Francisco, kind of the same thing. It's going to be roughly 25 up to 40, 50% more expensive. So that's where you can really take into account that additional cost. So if you were in San Francisco and you adjusted your price by 50%, that's going to add $24,000 to your budget. So a project that may cost $48,000 in Kansas City might cost $72,000 in San Francisco. And then contingency is really to cover any kind of unforeseen costs or issues that may arise on the project. So whether it's going to be something that you find behind a wall or we're not anticipating, or maybe it's just a flat out change order where you're changing the scope of the work, that's what this contingency is really used to cover. So I'm just going to plug in 10%. That's going to cover any kind of unforeseen issues that we might see or need to do on the project. So that extra $4,800 will be a budget that we'll use in case anything bad happens on the project, where we'll need additional costs budgeted into our rehab. Contractors overhead and profit. So this is if you're going to be subbing out or actually hiring a general contractor to manage the rehab for you. Now if you're going to be managing the subs yourself, so hiring all the subs, scheduling all the subs, you won't need this contractor's overhead and profit. But if you're going to be hiring a general contractor to manage all of your subs and hire and schedule your subs on your project, he's going to want to get paid a profit and fee to manage the project. So that's where that can come into play, and that's generally going to be probably 10 to 15% of the costs. So if you plugged in 15% there, you can see how that would add an additional $7,000 to cover the contractor's time and his fee and his profit on the project. And then labor tax and material tax. Labor tax is really more of kind of a local thing, so you'll have to check with your local jurisdiction. We don't particularly have labor tax here in our area, but I believe in Canada and some other states around the country, they charge a tax on top of the labor that is getting installed on the project. So this would be a percentage of the labor costs that you currently have budgeted on the project. So it looks like we have around $31,000 in labor, so 10% of $31,000 is $3,100. So if you've got labor tax in your area, just make sure that you're including that. And then material tax is going to be tax on the materials that you purchase, so just sales tax on the materials that you're purchasing. In Kansas City, it's roughly 7%, so you can see that would add an additional $1,100 to our budget for the material tax. So now you can see our overall budget for this project is $54,000. If you want to see a summary, you can see a summary here which shows you all of your categories that you actually have costs associated with, and then it'll give you a breakdown by labor, material, and your total, and then give you a cost per square foot. I don't think we have a square footage for this property plugged in, but it would give you a cost per square foot here, and then it also breaks down your percentage of the project estimate. So that's a quick overview of how you can create an estimate using our repair cost estimator. If you have any questions at all, please let us know. Thanks. Bye.